Alrighty, so we have Vinc Pichel versus Austin Hubbard. So Vinc Pichel, nearly 39 years old. Getting up there in age for sure. Still hasn't had too many fights under his belt. It's crazy that he's been in the UFC for 9 years. He's had 9 fights. Very inactive throughout a long stretch. Normally you get periods of inactivity, but his whole career has just been inactivity, basically. But low key, he's 6-1 his last 7. He's only lost to a UFC fighter is Gillespie, so there's no shame in that. And he's quietly put together a good resume. Alright, so I'll break down the striker to these two. So for Hubbard, he's obviously the more natural striker. He's got nice fundamental boxing, straight right, left hook, very fundamental, throws all the right punches, does all the right things. He can stay in range after closing the distance, like he'll close distance to throw his hands, and then he won't exit range afterwards, and he gets caught in boxing range frequently, and he gets caught by double legs frequently. But yeah, also nice low calf kick, nice lead leg low kick. For Vinc Pichel, his stand-up serviceable. He's obviously not a natural striker, if you just watch him. He kind of has his hands low at all times, plays with fire a little bit there, uses head movement to avoid strikes when he's on the back foot, getting up there in age, kind of relying on reflexes for your strike and defense isn't the most advisable thing, but, it is what it is. Hasn't cost him too much so far in his career, I guess, but, yeah. But mostly his striking's a means to an end. He's trying to get the takedown, really. Like, he tries to feint you to, feints the jab, and he's just trying to get the opponent to back up, really. Just to back up onto the fence, then he can shoot from there. He sets up his double leg on the fence with like a blitz in 1-2, or a flurry, or just a straight right. But he's always looking to throw something when the opponent's on the fence, and then just duck under straight away, really. And that's where he likes the fight to be. He likes the wrestling transitions. He likes it to be, very grappling heavy, wrestling heavy. He likes the double leg dump on the fence. He likes the single leg, but his single leg technique isn't great. It's not as effective as his double leg. I think probably 80% of his successful takedowns would be the double leg. And Hubbard, he's hard to control on the mat. He's hard to pin down on the mat. You never really see him get controlled for long periods of time on the mat. He's very hard to hold down. And Pichel doesn't have the best top control. He's very loose on top, goes for really silly guard passes, silly submissions that are just not on at all. He just has really bad top control. But one thing Hubbard does that could get him in trouble here, Hubbard does give his back quite often to escape a clinch or a scramble. Pichel, he has pretty loose back control, but he's pretty aggressive in looking to take the back and take that back body lock. So he does need to watch out for that, because, yeah, you just don't want to give up that back body lock position and just get controlled for long periods of time, and that's what's happened to him in the past. So how these guys win fights, so both have good cardio. How these guys lose fights when Pichel faces a better wrestler. Like if you look at his record, like his only losses are to Gregor and Kabalov. So, when he faces a better grappler, he can't really use his own wrestling, and then he just gets out-wrestled, really. For Hubbard, it's the fact that he's too passive in the clinch and in grappling, scenarios, situations, whatever you want to call it. He just, kind of lets the opponent control him for too long and just accepts the position a bit too much. For Austin Hubbard again, he's a bit of a slow starter. So he's lost the first round in all 6 of his UFC fights. So that's just, it's just not on. You can't be starting slow. You can't be just giving up the first round and then you always have to win the next 2. It's just you're playing with fire there, really. Pass to victory for these two. So for Hubbard, keep it on the feet, be active, We'll discuss this at a greater length in a second, but yeah, just be active, volume. High kicks, Pichel reaches for those with his forearm, so if you can really look to throw some heavy high kicks, get maybe Pichel to, defend with his arms a little bit, wear him out a little bit, and then, won't be as strong on the body lock position and wrestling transitions and stuff like that, but it's just, it could potentially break his arm as well. Leg kicks as well. Look for offense immediately when he goes southpaw. When he goes southpaw, it's not his natural stance, and he doesn't throw too many strikes or much offense at all in southpaw. So, yeah, really look to punish him. It's not his natural wrestling stance as well. So, yeah, look to punish him when he goes southpaw. Look to extend your combinations. when he gets teed off on, when Pichel gets teed off on, he just kind of backs up and tries to weather the storm. He doesn't go for too many reactive doubles, reactive blast doubles. He's not that kind of guy. He's more takedown on the fence type of guy. So yeah, really look to extend your combinations if you got him backing up. But for Austin Hubbard, don't let him stall, in the wrestling transitions. Always make him work, always try and improve your position and get out of there. For Vinc Pichel, look to take the front foot and then fake him all the way to the fence and then shoot from there. Grab that wrestling ride as he turns in a lot of clinch scrambling situations, as we talked about before. So look to grab the wrestling ride and mat returns from there. Look to create a lot of scrambles. I think you have the scrambling advantage, and I think you can out-scramble him, every time you create a scramble. That benefits you, in my opinion. So how I see this fight going. So I feel like we've seen this fight before, Austin Hubbard is faced literally every grappler in the UFC by now, pretty sure. On the feet, Hubbard, he's a better striker, he's more comfortable there, better defensively. Pichel could potentially outwork him because Hubbard's a bit low volume, but I expect Hubbard to cruise if the fight stays on the feet, which I don't believe it will, Pichel, he generally comes in with a volume takedown approach, and I wouldn't expect anything different here, especially given the success that Hubbard's previous opponents have had with taking Hubbard down and controlling him with the wrestling ride and the wrestling transitions. I think that's what he's going to be looking for. Like 80% of Pichel's successful takedowns are the double leg on the fence, and if Hubbard showed me on tape that he could defend the double leg on the fence, then I would favor him here, but he just lets his opponents drop levels and get on the hips like in the clinch just way too often. And I think Pichel's going to get Hubbard down a lot, but not necessarily score too much meaningful top time, just kind of grinding on Hubbard and in turn just completely nullifying Hubbard's offense, really. Basically all of Hubbard's wins in the UFC are from his opponents gassing out, and that's when he starts to take over. That's basically all of his UFC fights when you really think about it and when you look back on it. Like really, it's kind of crazy how similar all of his fights play out. But the problem here is that Pichel has really good cardio, so he can't just rely on outlasting his opponent here. So I'd like to see him be more active in this fight. Too often he lets the opponents get a head start because he's a slow starter, and just kind of relies on them running out of gas. But in that way, you're always going to be a step behind. You're always going to be a step behind your opponent, and you're playing catch up. So it's just not the move, and it's just not. It's not what you want to do against Pichel, because Pichel won't let off the gas. I think the fight's going to be fairly back and forth, leaning Pichel because of the wrestling threat, and generally when it's pretty even, it's striker versus grappler. You want to take the grappler because they just are able to stall in that position, and also I feel like Pichel will hustle a little bit more when push comes to shove late in the fight. I think he'll be able to force his wrestling a bit later in the fight, where Hubbard might get controlled a little bit easier later in the fight. So yeah, I'm going to take Pichel, but it's basically a 50-50. Alright, so if you guys could like the video, that'd be awesome. Cheers. Alright, so prediction is Vinc Pichel by decision. I think it's basically a 50-50. I think the line could be even a little bit closer. I just feel like it's going to be a very close fight, probably going to be 1-1 going into round 3, and then round 3 is very close. It's just like who wants it more. That's just how I feel this fight goes. So yeah, I'm looking to live bet Hubbard after round 1. Like, if he's having a little bit of success defending the double leg on the fence, because he's generally a very slow starter, so if he's like $3 or something, if Vinc pinches round 1, then yeah, I might bet that. Just because he's just going to look terrible in the first round, usually. And yeah, they might just expect that to keep going, but he generally pulls it back and, shows up for the next 2 rounds. So, hoping for a really good price on Hubbard after round 1. If I was to play Hubbard, it would probably be like $2.40 or plus 140. He's not really someone I want to bet at that price. Pichel, you don't really want to bet him at this price either. You want to bet Pichel as a dog because he's a guy that's going to go out and, grind out wins, but he's never a guy that's going to like dominate, you know what I mean? It's probably just going to be a very close fight. I think it's always going to be a very close fight between these two whenever they fight. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling.